the last session of assessment section, and I would like to introduce our presenters, Julia Zabala-Delgado from Spain and Barbara Sawicka from Poland, and they're going to deliver a speech on the test validation as a result of mutual cooperation between these two universities. So over to you.
Okay, so what we are going to present it's a work in progress. We've been working on validating our tests for 2 years now, 2-3 years now, and this is the section on speaking test validation. All this research is part of our work towards the work for the mutual recognition of certificates within the NULTE framework. And this research was made between the exams, ATEP exams from CERMO, the Police Association, and CercleS exams from Spain, from the Spanish Association, CercleS. So I'll give you a bit of an overview of what we are going to talk about. We're going to very briefly talk about what NULTE is. I say very briefly because I don't know how many of you were yesterday in our panel where we discussed what NULTE was in depth, so I'll be very brief. I'll also give a very brief literature review, or it's just a literature introduction to the background of our study. We will then talk about our research questions and the methodology. As you can see here, it is a mixed method analysis, but we're in the qualitative stage. We were hoping to be in the quantitative stage now, but well, as you know, this year has been a little bit atypical. So we haven't been able to conclude. We will do so, we hope, before the end of the year. So that is why, although it is a mixed method, comparative analysis, we're going to talk mostly about the qualitative section of it. We will then go on to explain to you what our results have been, or what our results are being. As I said, this is a work in progress. What are our conclusions as well, and the limitations we have found, and the further research we intend to carry out. So what is NATI? I'll be, as I was saying, very brief. NATI is the network of university language testers in Europe, and we work within CercleS under the umbrella of CercleS. So who are we? We are language test providers from European universities. And in all our cases, so in all the case, in the case of the people that are part of NATI right now, we have developed our individual language testing systems nationally. What we intend to do, belonging to NULTE and working with NULTE, is to strengthen our cooperation, the cooperation between the systems, to make our systems better, and to achieve the mutual recognition of our certificates in higher education in Europe and beyond, if possible. So within this overarching aim, what are the aims of our network? Our aims are developing common standards in language education and practice, and in language testing and assessment in higher education. So we're talking about language certificates in higher education at universities. We're trying to ensure quality in the provision of language teaching and testing services, and set standards in order to be able to recognize, as I said, our certificates internationally. We also are hoping to contribute to language assessment literacy and to the expertise in developing tests, and we hope to do so by using the expertise that already exists in our universities and collaborate together to sort of lend this expertise from one universities to the other. We're trying to learn from each other and learn from the experiences that some systems have and maybe others don't, or from sharing practices. And with all this, we also aim to contribute to the improvement of language teaching and learning, of course, as we are all higher education institutions. So we've developed a quality assurance framework, and this quality assurance framework is heavily related to the fact that we're higher education institutions. So we set minimum standards concerning the following aspects, not limited to the following aspects, but the most important aspects are our test purpose and specifications, as our purpose is related to higher education. And so we have standards concerning this. We take into consideration the fact that we have a very specific context. Also regarding test design and item writing, this is more to do with the fact that we adhere to international good practices. Also quality control and test analysis. I'm not going to go into detail here, but basically is establishing quality control practices and control mechanisms to ensure that item writing is carried out following, again, good practices. Test analysis, I mean, we were talking about the quantitative part I was mentioning. We're talking about statistical analysis of our test. Also test administration to ensure reliability of results and to avoid malpractice. Washback effect and impact, not only because washback is important for any high stake exams, but also because being universities, some of us public universities, some of us private universities, washback and impact is very important as we are dealing with education and we are dealing with systems of education. And also a minimum standards concern our certificates. As I said from the beginning, we're trying to obtain or work with the mutual recognition of our certificates, and these certificates need to comply with certain rules. Right now, you can see the members of NATI. We are always open to accepting new members. So we talked about this already yesterday, but so that you know, you can always contact us. As for literature review, I'll be very brief. One of the things that characterizes university exams is that they rely heavily on performance tests. Speaking and writing are extremely important for university graduates. So what are the main features of assessing speaking and writing with performance test? The rater, the scale, the instrument, and the candidate. So in order to ensure the validity and reliability of our test and to analyze the validity of our speaking test, we needed to focus on to have very detailed specifications, transparent assessment criteria. We needed to make sure that our exams were eliciting language samples that were appropriate for what we were intending to measure. We needed to have very clear rubrics, and we needed to make sure that both our exams have very clear performance guidelines for not only examiners, but also examinees. So the background for our study is, as you can see, our exams. You have it on screen, so I'm not going to go into detail. I'm just going to say that they're both high stakes exams. As I said, national associations, national exams recognized nationally. And the main difference, the main important similarity is that both our exams require our candidates to pass every section of the exam in order to successfully to achieve a pass. So this is something that's very important for both certification systems. And the main difference is that in the case of ATHER exams in Poland, there is the target language use domain is English for specific academic purposes, always related to the field of study, while in the case of CercleS in Spain, it's a general English exam in a university context. So we're talking about general academic English.
As far as the structure of the speaking examination is concerned, both ACET and CercleS assess speaking production and interaction. Test takers take the speaking part of the examination in pairs, and the assessment is always conducted by 2 examiners, an interlocutor, and an assessor. ACET examination is composed of 2 tasks. The first task is a monologue-type question related to the field of study, checking language competence and foreign language skills in the range of the functions such as description of a process, device, system, or phenomenon, explaining issues and defining concepts, argumentation, classification, comparing and contrasting, mediation. The second task is a general academic task, a dialogue-type task related to topics such as work, lifestyle, travel, technology, assessing language competence and skills to conduct a conversation and in the appropriate style in a foreign language in a range of functions such as expressing opinions, convincing, taking the floor, expressing consent or objection. CercleS, on the other hand, consists of 3 tasks. The first task is an interactive activity. It is a dialogue-type question in which the examinee talks to the interlocutor on a familiar or general academic topic, such as daily life, leisure, sport, work, technology, or entertainment. The purpose of the task is to assess language competence and productive speaking skills, to express ideas, give arguments, provide explanations and descriptions. The second task is a monologue in which the examinees express their opinions on a variety of general academic topics, such as advantages and disadvantages of different forms of communication. The aim of the task is to check the examinee's ability to plan the discourse, highlight salient points, and offer details. Finally, the third task is an interactive task in which examinees are supposed to solve a problem together. The problems belong to the familiar and general academic domain, such as deciding how to organize a weekend for a teenage cousin, or discussing the importance of ideas which should be incorporated into a presentation about studying abroad. The objective of the task is to assess the examinee's ability to express and defend a point of view, negotiate meanings, and reach an agreement. Research questions. So, how can we check if ACET and CercleS are comparable examinations? In order to compare the examinations, we have decided to pose 3 questions. Are ACET and CercleS speaking papers comparable in terms of specifications and performances elicited? Are the criteria used in both cases transparent and comparable? Do examiners and examinees in both examinations have clear guidelines to ensure fairness? And how do they compare? In order to answer the questions and test our hypotheses, we have gathered the following research materials: ACET and CercleS B2 speaking test specifications, ACET and CercleS B2 rating criteria for speaking performances, ACET and CercleS B2 guidelines for examiners and examinees, and 67 recorded samples of B2 speaking papers rated by both ACET and CercleS examiners. As regards methodology, which we are going to employ to test our hypotheses, we have conducted a qualitative analysis so far, and we are planning to conduct a quantitative analysis. The qualitative analysis consists of a comparative analysis of specifications, a comparative analysis of rating criteria, a comparative analysis of examiner training, and examinee guidelines. The quantitative analysis will focus on the correlational study of speaking ratings of examinee performances conducted by both ACET and CercleS examiners from January to June 2019. In order to compare ACET and CercleS tasks, we used Douglas's framework. Building on the earlier work of Bachmann and Palmer, who developed a framework for describing and evaluating target language use situations and tasks, Douglas proposed its adaptation to the LSP context. As one of the ACET tasks belongs to the LSP domain, we decided to use his framework to compare task rubric, the input, the expected response, the interaction between input and response, and assessment characteristics. An extract from this comparison is presented in this slide. Here we have the comparison of monologic tasks from ACET and CercleS exams. Summing up, both tasks are similar as regards the characteristics of rubric, input, response, the interaction between input and response, and assessment. There are also some differences underlined in this slide. These, however, mostly stem from the fact that CercleS monologic task belongs to the domain of general language, whereas ACET monologic task is field-specific. As I mentioned before, assessment criteria are similar. There are, however, some differences, as you can see in this slide. ACET makes use of an analytic scale with 4 components of content, grammar, vocabulary, and phonology, and the descriptors as regards content are different for the monologic and dialogic task, with the focus on the effectiveness of the delivery of the topic in the monologic ESP task and the effectiveness of the contribution to communication in the general academic interactive task. CercleS makes use of 2 scales, an analytic scale with 4 components of grammar, vocabulary, discourse management, and interactive communication, and a holistic scale for overall effectiveness of communication. CercleS uses 5 rating bands, whereas ACET uses 4 rating bands for content, grammar, and vocabulary, and 3 for phonology. I will show you for a moment the tables, but I'm not sure if it will be possible for you to read them. So this is an ACET rating criteria table with content, grammar, vocabulary, ESP task, and general academic task. And this is the rating table from CercleS with the bands and the criteria of grammar, vocabulary, discourse management, interactive communication and pronunciation, and the holistic scale for overall performance. Both ACET and CercleS and ACET have developed quality control procedures. The procedures are similar and involve CFR familiarization exercises, individual rank ordering of B2 productions from previous administrations of their examinations, group discussions among examiners and trainings, test performance samples marked by expert judges, and individual consultations. Both examination systems have also produced detailed performance guidelines for examiners and examinees. Now let's come back to our original research questions. Are ACET and CercleS speaking papers comparable in terms of specifications and performances elicited? All in all, there are more similarities than differences between these two systems. The organization of assessment and rating is similar. Both examinations assess speaking production and interaction. Both examinations assess language components as well as skills. And finally, both examinations focus on similar language functions, such as the ability to describe, compare, explain, express opinions, provide arguments, and persuade. There are also differences, but these mainly stem from the fact that one of ACET tasks is a field-specific task. The second question, are the criteria used in both cases transparent and comparable? They are certainly transparent and to a large degree comparable. Do examiners and examinees in both examinations have clear guidelines to ensure fairness? And how do they compare? Yes, both examination systems have developed quality control procedures and guidelines for examiners and examinees. These are based on similar foundations in both CercleS and ACET exams. In conclusion, the assessment of speaking is a challenging activity which involves a high level of subjectivity. There are a number of ways through which we can limit this subjective element in assessment and thus ensure consistency. In this slide, you can see the fundamental ones. So we should produce appropriate tasks that would elicit proper language samples. We should make highly detailed specifications. We should develop transparent assessment criteria tailored to the examination tasks. We should construct a suitable scoring system. We should make unambiguous rubrics and performance guidelines for the examiners and examinees. We should conduct recurrent examiner training. And finally, we should evaluate the whole system by conducting validation studies. Limitations and further research. Are ACET and CercleS speaking papers comparable in terms of scoring student performances while using both universities' sets of criteria and rubrics? What is the impact of specific purpose knowledge on the overall speaking test score? We are going to find out what the answers are by employing a quantitative correlational study. The quantitative evidence includes the analysis of patterns of correlations between CercleS and ACET speaking test scores. The validation evidence was gathered by examining the test ratings of 67 students from Universitat Politecnica de Valencia, Spain, and Poznań University of Technology, Poland, who took the exam in English between January and June 2019. The assessment of each student performance was conducted by two pairs of examiners, one pair from Universitat Politecnica de Valencia and one pair from Poznań University of Technology. An obvious limitation of the study is a more moderate number of samples gathered so far. This concludes our presentation. Thank you for listening to us. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them now.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. And the audience is invited to ask questions. Martina?
Hi. I didn't know how to decide between Spanish and English. I have a lot of questions. Some of them you answered at the end of your presentation. The first question is about: do you plan, for example, to include into the qualitative phase of comparing criteria also a control group compiled out of the students of Poznan University taking a Spanish exam and Spanish students taking the Polish exam, and to compare the results as well? Maybe this could be, I don't know. What's your plan?
Well, if I may answer, it's a very good idea to carry out such an experiment, such a study. We haven't done it so far. We have just concentrated on rating by different raters from different universities, by pair rating from different universities.
Sorry.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we haven't done it for the speaking, but we did for writing, listening, and reading. So yes, this analysis with students taking tasks from both exams has been, we've carried it out with the rest of the papers. We're still working on the speaking, but yes, and it's published, so you can read it if you wanted to.
It was published a year ago. I wanted just to add one more thing, that it might be difficult for students from Universitat Politècnica de Valencia to take the whole speaking exam in Poznan without special preparation, very challenging preparation, because the examinations, as I mentioned in the presentation, one of the tasks is a specific purpose task, which means in reality that a student might get a question about the infrastructure of telecommunication systems, or about the processes that take place in a chemical reaction, right? Because this is what this type of content, this type of articles students read in our classes, right? It's a specific purpose in language for specific purposes. So one of the tasks would be probably impossible to be taken by Spanish students.
Which is why, although we did it with the written exam, which was easier to separate one part from the other, this was very difficult to design from the point of view of the speaking exam. So that's why we still have to think about how to do that.
Questions?
So maybe I can ask a question. As for the preparation of the students for this exam, so do you make them aware of the assessment criteria right at the beginning of the course, or how do they know what they should perform, or how they will be tested and assessed? So how do you present the criteria to them?
In the case of the CercleS, it's public. They can download it. They have all the information available to them on the website. They know exactly how they're going to be assessed. They have the criteria, and they even have examples of other candidates speakings and writings to papers pre-assessed so that they know exactly what they're going to be asked or what's going to be asked required from them.
The same situation with Poznan, Poznan University of Technology. We've got it on the website. Students take the examination at the end of the language course, so it's necessary for them to read the whole procedure. And of course, students are teachers are welcome to incorporate the pre-ACED activities and tasks before students take the examination. For example, in mock exam activities.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Martina?
I'm really interested in the comparison of the task specification. How many experts did you use? Were they combined from both institutions, or it was done separately by Poznan and by Valencia? How was it?
Initially, this was done as part of the NULTE network. All this started with the network, and there is a very specific comparison of specifications made by the people in NULTE, by the different. I believe it's also public, and it's on the CercleS webpage. And then for this specific study, it was redone, or it was done more in depth by both of us, by both researchers, together with our colleagues who also took part in the examinations. All specifications, both ACED and CercleS, they go through quality assurance processes nationally, so we also have the data from that.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, thank you very much for your insightful presentation. Again,